right, to all the action in the auto sector, where industry body SIAM has said that manufacturers may have to cut FY20 auto sales estimates if the slowdown continues. Those comments follow sales data for July that shows passenger car sales are down 36% over the last year, while commercial vehicle sales are down 26%. There is no respite for two-wheeler segment either, with sales down 17% when compared to the same period a year ago. Now, according to sources, a lack of liquidity from NBFCs is the main reason behind the slowdown in the auto sector, and banks demanding a 25% collateral for inventory financing has also impacted dealers vastly. My colleague Parikshit Luthra spoke to Maruti Suzuki Chairman RC Bhargava about what he attributes this slowdown to and what steps can be taken to overcome the problem. Here's a slice of that conversation.
See, we've had slowdowns in the past also. 2008-9 there was a slowdown, 13-14 there was a slowdown. And in the first last two quarters of last year, when there was a slowdown, it was not a serious slowdown, it was small numbers. The first quarter of this year and July, as you just said, have seen a very much different type of figure for the drop in sales. So what is different from the previous things? And I think what we have come to the conclusion is that a major factor for this has been that there have been several regulatory and taxation changes, not only by the central government, but by the state government and state government agencies, which have all come together and led to a substantial increase in the price of cars for the customer, on-road price, not the ex-factory price, but on the on-road price. And we are looking at the numbers. These include, for example, the road tax. Several states have increased road tax from between 1% to up to 5% of the cost of the vehicle. Now, coming on top of the increases which are inevitable because BS6 changeover and safety regulations being implemented in terms of ABS, in terms of airbags, in terms of side body, in any case had come together, which possibly could have been staggered. They need not have come together. But those came together. Then we had the insurance increases which came also on top of that. We've had financial costs going up because the dealers are not getting inventory financing without providing up to 50% collateral, which is a cost. Right. Customers' interest rates going up despite the repo cuts, and they're needing to pay up to 20% deposit, which earlier on was barely 10%.
So you're saying that a large number of policy changes over the last 1 year, plus crunch in liquidity, is impacting sentiment on the ground?
Both have come together to make it difficult for the customer.
So how should one address this? As a veteran of the industry, what would be your recommendation?
Now, some of these things could still, if the states recognize the importance, be staggered to the next year. For example, these road tax increases. Why do it this year?
You mean registration or road tax?
The road tax. The registration is still a draft notification. That in any case should be postponed till the crisis is over. But I'm talking of the road tax, which is this 1 to 5% increase in road tax. So this has a major effect on the customer. If the car costing 10,000 rupees and you have a 3% increase in road tax, he's paying 30,000 rupees as extra road tax. It's not a small amount of money.
Okay. And what about GST? GST at 28%. Most dealers, most OEMs say that this is hurting their sales. This should be reduced to 18%. The government is of the view that GST is not the problem here. There is a problem with liquidity. They're also blaming OEMs for piling up inventory on dealers and not bringing in BS6 vehicles on time.
On GST, the industry has made a representation to the government. Beyond that, what is going to happen on GST, whether it will be cut, will not be cut, is something which is futile to speculate, because that's totally a decision of the GST Council and of the Finance Minister. And I think the Finance Minister is fully aware of the crisis which is here. But what the Finance Ministry and the Finance Minister consider to be the appropriate solutions has to be worked out by them. And so it's no point speculating on that. What you said about BS6 is not, of course, true of Maruti. We have already launched 6 BS6 vehicles.
Including the Ertiga.
Including the Ertiga. If you look at the petrol vehicle sales, these constitute about 70% of the petrol vehicle sales. So before the middle of the year, in the first 6 months, we've already covered 70% of the petrol. Diesel obviously can't be done within this financial year because there is no diesel fuel. And diesel BS6 vehicles cannot run on BS4 fuel. Petrol BS6 vehicles can run on petrol BS4 fuel. So there's a difference.
Right.
That's why we are doing the petrol vehicles. The diesel vehicle will not be done this year.
Okay. Also, sir, to ask you about the larger problem that the industry is facing, if you had to rate these recommendations in order of priority, easing liquidity at the NBFC level, removing these collateral restrictions when it comes to inventory financing, slashing cess or GST, where would you put this?
See, some things are within our control, some are not within our control. So there's no point my saying anything about things which are not within my control. But this inventory financing, we have already taken up with the banks. And some of the banks have agreed that instead of a blanket requirement of collateral, they will do it on a case-to-case basis. That where a dealer has a record of having followed all the rules and made payments in time and no defaults and no diversion, there's no point in asking him to give collateral because he has a perfectly good credit history. Where dealers have some issues of default or some other thing, it's a different issue. But 80% of the dealers at least will fall in the first category. So why penalize them because some 20% or something have done something wrong? So banks have recognized that. So they have been pretty quick to recognize that. Banks are already cutting down on interest rates. At least 2 or 3 banks, as you know, have dropped. Not adequately, but some drop. And on customer finance, they again have to look at more on a case-to-case basis that, or as a class of vehicles, which class of vehicles have high defaults, which class of vehicles don't have defaults. So why would you penalize the vehicles which don't have any significant defaults?
Right.
Just because some other class of vehicles has defaults or some other class of industry has defaults.
So look at it on a case-to-case basis.
Yeah. That is happening. That's within our control. So we have raised it with the bank. We've convinced them of the logic of what we are saying, and they're taking action. Somewhere this whole question of staggering of the things which is still possible to an extent, that has to be taken up by the government. Because it's only a question of postponement.
Policy announcements.
Policy announcements. They don't do all these policy announcements which have a financial impact on the customer altogether.
So do you think that transition to BS6, new insurance norms, this draft notification on registration, all of these new norms that have come into place over the last 1 year have somehow also confused the consumer? Also the EV push?
I'm not sure what confusion means.
Or put a doubt in their minds?
But the fact is, when it puts a big burden on his pocket, Indian customers by and large are not guys with a lot of surplus money. And if you suddenly say that our total cost of buying a vehicle has gone up by 20 or 25,000 rupees, he thinks that should I buy now or should I wait till I get a couple of more increments?
Do you see a reversal in this slowdown, sir?
I think
We've started the
there
festive
are
season.
two factors or three factors which will now come into play. The base effect will come into play from the third quarter of this year. This quarter will not be there, but when you come to results for the October-December quarter, there will be a base effect which will make the situation look better. Whether the number of car sales go up substantially is a different issue, but at least it will look better. The impact of some of these financial measures, banks and things, I think will come into play in the next 2-3 months. The BS6, BS4 thing will also play out by the end of December. Because no manufacturer can afford to keep manufacturing BS4 after December. For the reason that if you make after December, the risk of not selling it and not registering it by March is very high. So I think very few people will take the risk of manufacturing BS4 after December.
So can we take it for granted that MSIL will completely stop BS4 production by the end of December?
I think maybe a few vehicles, but by the end of December or sometimes in the early part of January, I think we will have completed the changeover completely.
And heavy discounting to clear present inventory?
We don't have that kind of inventory. I think this feeling that people have built up large inventories of BS4, we don't have large inventories of BS4. The only place where there is some inventory is in the diesel Brezza. Because there an impression has been created. I'm not sure how, but it has been created, that the Brezza as a model is going. Which is not true. Because, okay, I don't blame the customer for it also. Because till now we never announced that there is going to be a petrol Brezza coming early in the next financial year. Not next financial year, next calendar year. So early in 20, we'll have a petrol Brezza.
Yeah.
So it's not that the model is getting discontinued. The engine will change.
Okay.
So customers who might have been feeling that this model will go and therefore parts will not be available, service will not be available and all that, they should realize that this model is not going anywhere. It's going to continue, but with a petrol engine.
Yeah.
That's all.
And what about the future of diesel vehicles for Maruti Suzuki?
See, diesel vehicles have both pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
And we're not quite sure how the customer will behave. You know, it's a clean vehicle. BS6 diesel vehicle is a clean vehicle. But the cost goes up significantly. A petrol hybrid costs as much as a diesel BS6 and gives roughly the same fuel efficiency. What will the customer prefer? Maybe both can be done. But if a diesel is there, the diesel will have to be not in the 1.3 liter. It will have to be a bigger engine. And we are looking at that. And possibly we'll have a bigger diesel engine vehicle coming later sometimes.
Okay. In the next financial year, maybe?
I'm not sure of the timing. It's not something which is imminent, so it's no point even talking about it.
Right.
I mean, the customer shouldn't start thinking that a bigger diesel vehicle is around the corner. It's not.
Not. Okay. About the industry slowdown, there have been production cuts. Maruti Suzuki has also brought about production cuts. To what extent has it affected the workforce, the permanent workforce and the temporary workforce?
The permanent workforce doesn't get affected. What happens is that when the contracts of the temporary workers come to an end and there's a downturn in demand, those people's contracts are not renewed. And that's what's been happening. And when the demand picks up, those guys are again called back. So, but the real impact Parikshit, is not on the labor in the factories.
Yeah.
It's the impact on employment which arises after the vehicle leaves the showroom. If you look at the employment possibilities which a car generates, drivers, training of people to drive and get licenses, financing, insurance, petrol dispensation, repairs,
Logistics.
service, logistics.
The entire value chain gets affected.
The whole value chain goes down, and this car lasts for years and years, and people always have something happening to the car. We don't look at that as part of the value chain of labor or job creation. But actually, if you look at all manufacturing, manufacturing is the biggest creator of jobs. Amongst manufacturing,
Right.
the automobile industry, whether it's cars or whether it's trucks, both are very heavy creators of employment. You know, trucks employ or create employment for a large number of people.
So you feel that this is only transient, or you feel that there are larger problems in the economy which are leading to
No, I think this is transient.
Okay.
I don't think there is any major problem in the economy at all. And I think this transient problem will go away in a few months.
Right.
And I think the government also has realized that this is a serious matter. You know, a Prime Minister making a statement for the need.
To ask you specifically about that, the Prime Minister said that there should be no confusion about this, no speculation. There is a place for both technologies,
Exactly.
EVs and IC engines.
Till now, people have thought that only government was interested only in electric vehicles.
That gives clarity? This gives clarity, the Prime Minister's statement?
I think this clarifies that this is not as if the only thing which government is interested in. There is a absolute place for both types of vehicles.
Right.
And all kinds of technologies.
Okay. And my final two questions now. Maruti has always been betting very heavily on CNG vehicles. You have 6 CNG vehicles already in your portfolio, including the Ertiga.
Sure.
What's the future for CNG? Are you going to continuously push hard on the CNG front?
You know, our CNG vehicle program is essentially related to what the government is doing in this sector and what the customer does, because ultimately I have to sell it to the customer. The government's efforts to build the infrastructure for CNG distribution has got highly intensified. Mr. Pradhan's 10,000 outlets, Prime Minister opening a whole lot of CNG stations and things like that. So government is very clear on pushing CNG infrastructure for mobility. The customer so far has shown a liking for CNG vehicles. So we will continue therefore to follow that route and try and make CNG vehicles as acceptable to the customer as possible and as many as possible. Small cars particularly are certainly absolutely ideal for CNG conversion. And we do intend that all our small cars will get converted to CNG. Because of BS6 and things, engineering going on, this has slowed down a little bit. But once the BS6 program is over, they can put more resources into CNG. So that will happen.
Okay.
And also, I think at some point, government should look at how to make CNG kits cheaper, how to make CNG cars safer, because there's a whole lot of retrofitting going on. You know, for every car we sell, I think about 3 cars are retrofitted. And they're all done with imported parts.
Right. And
they're not all that safe because there have been a number of accidents.
Right.
So we feel that the CNG cars should get a GST cut so that the vehicles from the factory can compete with these retrofitted ones. They'll be made in India. A lot of manufacturing of the kits will start in India instead of importing these kits.
You've got one small car that would be launched next year, which will be an electric vehicle. What is the future for electric vehicles at Maruti Suzuki?
See, at the moment, the small electric car is only targeted at the aggregators, Ubers and Olas and things. They're not targeted at private individual buyers. The government in the FAME scheme has also left out private buyers. So I think there is a realization that with today's technology on batteries, in terms of cost, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of charging time, electric cars are not likely to be acceptable to the customer. And however much I may want to promote the larger sale of electric cars, ultimately the customer has to buy them and find them acceptable. So that's not likely to happen for some time.
Okay. So, for example, Mahindra has announced that they would be launching 3 electric vehicles till 2021. Does Maruti Suzuki have similar plans?
No.
No such plans. This is only one car that...
At the moment, this is the car for private. Bigger cars will get launched in future as we develop them.
Right.
But for smaller cars, as I said, the problems of affordability, problems of range, and problems of infrastructure also need to be resolved, because a private individual is not a risk taker.